"Hello there," Luca said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "This area is for customers with appointments, or those seriously considering a purchase. You might be in the wrong place." It sounded polite enough. Northern Italians always know how to wrap rejection in velvet. But everyone could feel the thorns beneath it, especially her. I saw Enzo, another salesperson, nudge his colleague and suppress a grin. They expected her to retreat, to look embarrassed. But Clara didn't. She paused, just for a breath, her eyes meeting Luca's. Not confrontational, not evasive. Then shifting calmly to the Lamborghini in the center of the room, resting like a dormant beast. "I'm not in the wrong place," she said. Her voice was soft, steady, not defensive. "I just want to look at a car." And right then, I knew Luca had made a mistake. But he didn't back down. He kept his polished tone, the same politeness that had smoothed over many tense customer moments before. "Apologies," he said, gesturing toward the glass door as if it had already opened for her. "But this isn't a museum. We don't offer cars just to look at." I was standing nearby, close enough to see Clara subtly tighten the strap of her bag. No one else noticed, but I did. It wasn't the gesture of someone wounded. It was the gesture of someone remembering. Spring returned to Milan. Sunlight shimmered across the polished marble streets where elegant pedestrians strolled past luxury boutiques and exotic car showrooms. In this vibrant district, Cavallero Automobili, the legendary supercar dealership, stood like a cathedral to speed and status. A small chime echoed as a young girl stepped through the glass doors. Clara Moreau, 17, wore the uniform of Lycée Saint Laurent. A gray knee-length skirt, crisp white shirt, worn black leather shoes, and a faded olive backpack with frayed straps. She didn't draw attention immediately, but her eyes, deep brown, clear as a spring morning in the Dolomites, were not easily forgotten. Clara walked slowly, not hesitantly, but as if absorbing every detail of the space. The Ferrari SF90, the Lamborghini Huracan, the McLaren 765 LT, all resting in silence under showroom lights like predatory beasts, calm but waiting. Behind the reception desk, Luca Bianchi, sales manager, looked up at the sound of the door. Mid-30s, crisp white shirt, slim black tie, Swiss watch flashing under his cuff. His glance scanned Clara in an instant, school uniform, no jewelry, no entourage, and he made up his mind. He stepped out from behind the desk, all polished professionalism laced with something colder. "Hello there," he said, smile thin and measured. "This area is for customers with appointments or serious interest. Perhaps you've come to the wrong place." The accent was Northern Italian, soft, cultured, but the edge was clear. Another staff member elbowed a colleague and smirked. They expected her to blush, apologize, back away. Clara did not. She paused just a second, her gaze brushing past Luca to the red Lamborghini Aventador SVJ Roadster in the center of the room. It gleamed like fire held still under glass. "I'm not in the wrong place," she said quietly, her tone steady. "I just want to look at a car." In that moment I knew Luca had made a mistake, but he held his ground, still smiling that trained smile. "I'm sorry, but this isn't a museum." Clara nodded. No argument, no protest. She turned and walked out, unhurried, unfazed, as if this dismissal was nothing new. The sunlight hit her face as she pushed the door open. It was warmer now, but not enough to melt the chill forming in her chest. She didn't cry. She just gripped her backpack strap a little tighter and stepped down the marble stairs, back into the crowd. No one in that showroom realized that the next morning, they'd meet her again. And they'd remember that dismissal forever. The following morning, sun angled through the chestnut trees outside Cavallero Automobili, dappling the gray stone walkway. A staff member finished buffing a newly delivered Bentley. Everything felt routine, like yesterday had never happened. At exactly 9 a.m., a Rolls-Royce Phantom EWB in smoky gray glided to a stop at the entrance. The engine silenced. The air seemed to still. A driver in a black suit stepped out and opened the rear door. First to emerge was a tall, Composed man in a tailored navy suit, Jean Moreau, founder of Crescium Financial Group, key partner to two of Europe's largest supercar manufacturers. Then Clara Moreau stepped out. Same brown hair, same eyes, but today no school uniform. She wore a camel trench coat over a classic sapphire silk dress, dark brown Oxfords, sunglasses hooked on her collar, and a calmness that fit the showroom like it had been built around her. At the reception, Luca Bianchi was mid-call when he saw her. His voice faltered. He stared, first at Clara, then at the man beside her. A whisper ran through the room. Jean Moreau. Some staff turned to stare. Others tried to look busy. All remembered. Jean didn't greet anyone. He walked directly toward the display floor. Clara beside him, composed. She stopped in front of the Lamborghini Aventador SVJ Roadster, the same car from the day before. Luca had stepped from behind the desk now. His face tight, smile forced. Mr. Moreau. What an honor. And Miss Clara. Clara raised her eyes. Calm, but cold enough to freeze him in place. I'd like to know more about this car, she said, voice soft but unwavering. I didn't get the chance yesterday. Jean said nothing, just stood silently, watching his daughter with quiet pride. Luca's throat worked. He signaled to a junior colleague, but Clara cut in. I'd like you to show me, she said. You were the one who welcomed me yesterday, weren't you? The words weren't loud, but they echoed. Around them, silence spread like water on glass. Employees stopped moving. A few customers watched. An older gentleman near a Bentley gave a slight nod, like a silent applause for a checkmate just made. Luca inhaled, exhaled, his voice hoarse. Yes, this is the Aventador SVJ Roadster. Limited edition. V12 naturally aspirated engine. Top speed, 350 km/h. He kept talking, but didn't look at her. Clara stood there, no arrogance, no smugness. Just a young woman who knew where she stood, and no longer let others decide her worth. The following morning, sunlight filtered through the chestnut trees outside Cavallero Automobili, casting dappled patterns across the smooth gray stone path. A staff member was giving the final polish to a freshly delivered Bentley Continental. Everything unfolded as usual, unbothered, as if the events of the previous afternoon had never happened. At exactly 9 a.m., a Rolls-Royce Phantom EWB, painted in a shade of ash gray, pulled up silently before the main entrance. The engine shut off, wrapping the moment in a velvet hush. A chauffeur in a crisp black suit stepped out and opened the door. From within, a tall man emerged first, composed, dignified, wearing a navy blue suit tailored to understated perfection. He moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had long stopped needing introductions. Then came Clara Moreau, the same rich brown hair, the same eyes, but she was no longer the girl with the worn school backpack. Today, she wore a camel trench coat draped over a vintage silk dress in deep blue. Dark Oxford shoes, sunglasses resting on her collar, and that calm gaze, like she belonged here all along. At the front desk, Luca Bianchi was mid-phone call when he noticed a familiar silhouette. His voice faltered. He stared at Clara, and then at the man beside her. Jean Moreau, founder of Crescium Financial Group, a strategic partner to Europe's most elite car marques. The mood shifted instantly. A few staff members whispered his name, and every eye turned toward Clara, the girl they'd quietly dismissed just 18 hours ago. Jean walked straight toward the main showroom floor without acknowledging anyone. Clara walked beside him, unhurried, steady. She stopped in front of the Lamborghini Aventador SVJ Roadster, the same car she hadn't been allowed to approach yesterday. Luca had stepped out from behind the desk now. His smile was tight, his posture stiff, yet still trying to appear cordial. He bowed slightly. Mr. Moreau, it's an honor. And Miss Clara. Clara raised her head. Her expression held no anger, but her gaze was cool enough to freeze him mid-sentence. I'd like more details about this vehicle, she said quietly, but clearly. I didn't get the chance yesterday. Behind her, Jean said nothing. His eyes never left his daughter, glowing with silent pride. Luca hesitated. Sweat dotted his temples. He gestured for a junior associate, but Clara cut in. I'd like you to explain it to me. You were the one who helped me yesterday, weren't you? The words weren't loud, but they dropped with unmistakable weight. Silence crept into the room. Employees who had chuckled yesterday now exchanged uneasy glances. An older gentleman nearby, browsing the showroom, gave Jean a knowing nod, the kind you give when the board just flipped and the game changed. Luca drew a deep breath, voice unsteady. Yes, this is the Aventador SVJ Roadster, limited edition. Naturally aspirated V12 engine. Top speed of 350 kilometers per hour. He spoke, eyes fixed anywhere but on Clara. And Clara? She simply stood there, calm, grounded, not smug, not spiteful. Just a young woman who knew exactly who she was, and no longer let anyone else decide what she was worth. March the following year in Brussels, the political heart of Europe, a major conference on social equity in consumer services was held at the European Parliament building. On stage, among the rows of microphones and national flags, one name drew particular attention. Clara Williams, chairwoman of Infinity Group and founder of L'Atelier de Demain. This event wasn't on Clara's public agenda, but the invitation had come from a place she couldn't ignore. The European Human Rights Commission, which had received thousands of signatures supporting the integration of racial bias education into customer service training programs. Part of that proposal included a new training model based on the journey of Ms. Clara Williams. Clara stepped up to the podium. No prepared speech, no notes. She began with a soft voice that didn't need amplification. I didn't come here to teach a lesson. I came to share something very ordinary. A time I was asked to leave my seat. Not because I was wrong, but because I was seen wrong. The hall fell silent. Not a single paper rustled, no phones rang. She continued, I didn't sue. I didn't ask for an apology. But I rebuilt a system. And it all started with one question. How do we ensure that my daughter, and your children, won't grow up feeling like they always have to prove they're worthy enough? She spoke of Emma, her daughter, who once got kicked out of a store her own father owned. She spoke of Grace, the young flight attendant who stayed silent that day, but later helped design the new training program. And she spoke of herself, not as a CEO, but as a woman who had often been pushed aside because her silence had a color. When Clara finished, the applause was unlike anything the chamber had seen, in a forum often criticized for being too formal, too disconnected. Outside the hall, delegates lined up to sign a petition supporting the Retail Conduct Code, inspired by L'Atelier de Demain. A Dutch MP said to the camera, she didn't raise slogans. She redesigned the system, and that's how real change happens. That evening, Clara received a text message from an unknown number. Just one line. I heard you. No one has ever left me this speechless. Evelyn Drake. Clara didn't reply. Instead, she opened an email, the draft proposal for the second branch of L'Atelier, this time in Manchester, UK. She highlighted a note. Priority. Hire individuals previously dismissed for speaking out against discrimination. And she added one more line. We will turn society's mistakes into places of rebirth. At the end of the press conference, a young journalist asked, what makes you believe one person can change the system? Clara smiled gently, without hesitation. I never believed one person could do it alone. But I believe, if one person is brave enough not to look away, there will be a second, then a third, and eventually the system will have to change. Not out of fear, but because there is simply no kinder choice left. She closed her worn notebook, nodded politely, and walked out into the early spring sunlight, radiant like a promise. 3 months later, Clara Williams returned to London. Not for a board meeting, not for a product launch. This time, she came to open something else entirely, the Empathy First Training Center, the first physical hub for her emotional intelligence and customer care initiative. The center was built inside an old railway station in Camden, restored, but with its original brick walls and iron beams preserved. On the main hall wall, one message appeared in multiple languages. Respect is not a reaction. It is a decision. Clara didn't give a long speech. She quietly walked through the rooms, the simulated conflict classroom, the experience-sharing space, the story booth, where staff recalled moments they'd been discriminated against, or when they stood up for someone else. In a side room, Grace, now program director, led a session for trainees from various industries: retail, hospitality, transport. Behind her, a slide showed a woman standing calmly in an airport, an old photo of Clara. Grace turned to the group. What do you think made her respond with calm, not anger? A 22-year-old answered, because she knew if she got angry, they wouldn't see the truth. They'd only see the anger. Grace nodded. And because she knew, real power isn't in how loud you speak. It's in what words you choose and when. Outside, in a quiet garden under a young maple tree, Clara sat alone. A reporter approached cautiously. Ms. Williams, some call you a symbol of resistance. Do you see yourself as a hero? Clara smiled. Not with pride, nor denial. I didn't save anyone. I just refused to let the world treat me as if I didn't exist. But you started a movement, the reporter said. Do you think it will grow? I don't need it to become a trend, Clara replied. I just want it to become a habit. Before leaving, she paused beside the trainee list. One name made her stop: Evelyn D. Enrolled in Listening in Silence module. Clara pulled out a small piece of paper, scribbled a note. Not everyone gets a chance to make things right. Use this one well. She tucked it beside Evelyn's name. That day, it rained lightly in London. Clara walked away without an umbrella. Rain soaked her navy blazer, but her eyes sparkled, as if she had glimpsed a future where no one must earn the right to be respected. That, perhaps, is Clara Williams' greatest legacy. A lesson not meant to be memorized, but to be lived. Let me know if you'd like the rest of the story translated too. The Rolls-Royce Phantom glided smoothly out of the Cavallero Automobili showroom, its engine as silent as a long breath just released. Inside the car, a profound quiet lingered, not from tension, but because both passengers were lost in their own private thoughts. Jean Moreau gripped the steering wheel firmly. He didn't need to look to know that Clara was sitting beside him with her hands clasped neatly on her lap, eyes turned toward the window, where luxury boutiques and hurried pedestrians slid silently past. Finally, he broke the silence. You did the right thing. Clara tilted her head, looking at him. It was right, but it still stings. Jean smiled faintly. Because you recognized the injustice, but you didn't let it provoke rage, you turned it into dignity. That's strength. Clara was quiet for a moment, then said softly, when he said, "This car isn't for people like you," it wasn't the words that hurt. It was how familiar they felt. Jean nodded slowly. Because you've heard it in different forms, in university lecture halls, in conference foyers, in the silence of boardroom glances. But today you didn't stay silent. Clara looked at her father, and for a fleeting moment, a rare glimmer of mischief lit up her face. And you stood there like a silent supporting character, until I needed a shield. Jean chuckled, a quiet sound, but full of pride. A good father isn't the one who steps in before you need him. He's the one who's patient enough to stand behind you, so you can learn to stand on your own. Those words made Clara turn to face the windshield. Ahead, the road leading to the highway stretched open. The soft afternoon sunlight filtered through the trees, casting a golden sheen across the car's body. After a pause, Clara spoke again. I thought, buying the Lamborghini for you was a way to honor you. But now I see. Maybe it was a gift for myself. Jean glanced over, curious. What do you mean? Because through it, I realized just how far I've come. Jean nodded, eyes still on the road. And you'll go even farther, Clara, because today you didn't just step out of a showroom. You stepped out of the shadow of others' expectations and into the light of your own making. Clara smiled, a full smile, not from the thrill of a victory, but from the quiet recognition of a door within herself opening. The car continued down the road, carrying the father and daughter not just away from a showroom of polished glass and chrome, but toward a journey defined not by brands, but by the grace with which they chose to face the world. 2 days after the incident at Cavallero Automobili, Clara Moreau returned to St. Emilion University, where she was pursuing her prestigious MBA. The main limestone building stretched high into the pale Parisian sky, each large window reflecting the golden-turning autumn trees. Everything seemed calm, but Clara knew that peace was only surface deep. This morning's class was Leadership in a Global Environment. The lecturer, Professor Henri Delacourt, a revered figure in academia and a strategic advisor to many of Europe's top corporations. Clara entered the lecture hall early as usual. A few students were already there, chatting animatedly. As she passed by, a group of 3, 2 men and a woman, fell silent for a split second. She caught their glances skimming her simple blazer, pausing at her slightly worn white sneakers. One of the men, Etienne, heir to a banking dynasty, smirked. "Well, looks like public school pride is back in our elite class." The blonde girl beside him giggled. "Heard she went to Cavallero to ask about a Lamborghini. Cute." Clara didn't respond. She walked straight to the 3rd row, opened her laptop, and pretended not to hear. But the words lingered somewhere in her chest. Not because they were new, but because they were exhausting. Professor Delacourt entered right on time, his gaze sweeping across the room. Today's topic, soft power in leadership. Does anyone have a real-world example to share? Clara raised her hand, for the first time in many classes where she'd remained quiet and observant. "I have an example, Professor. A personal one." Delacourt nodded. "Go ahead, Mademoiselle Moreau." Clara stood. The room quieted. Every head turned toward her. She faced forward, eyes unwavering. 3 days ago, I walked into a luxury car showroom. I wasn't wearing designer labels. I didn't have a luxury watch. I was just a girl in an old-school uniform, inquiring about a Lamborghini. At the back of the room, Etienne raised an eyebrow. I was dismissed, mocked, politely shown the door. The next day, my father, the actual recipient of that car, returned. Not to retaliate, but to remind them. Respect should not be based on net worth or skin tone. Silence. Clara continued. That is soft power. No shouting. No retaliation. Just letting truth and character speak louder than ego. Still, no one spoke. For the first time, Etienne looked down. No smile this time. Professor Delacourt offered a rare smile, quiet and full of respect. An excellent example, and a reminder that no business school teaches enough. True leadership begins with how we treat those who have nothing to offer us. When class ended, Clara gathered her things. As she headed toward the door, a voice called out, "Clara!" It was Anais, the soft-spoken German student known for her academic brilliance. "I heard what happened at Cavallero. I was once denied at a bank because my accent was unfamiliar. Thank you for speaking up today." Clara smiled gently. For the first time that morning, class didn't feel like just theory. "Thank you for not laughing." Anais shook her head. "No, I'm learning from you." As Clara stepped out into the campus courtyard, the midday sun caught her curls like an inverted crown. She didn't need applause. She didn't need a title. But this time, she knew. She wasn't walking alone. A gentle afternoon rain washed the cobbled streets of Paris's 8th arrondissement, where the Cavallero Automobili showroom stood. Droplets slid quietly down the tall glass facade, as if rinsing away the residue of a turbulent morning. Inside, soft white ceiling lights gleamed on the Lamborghini SVJ Roadster, the car that had once stood at the center of a silent, yet deeply resonant, confrontation. Today, the showroom was unusually quiet. No murmured laughter. No dismissive glances from staff. Arthur Leclerc, the showroom manager, sat alone in his office, slowly turning an untouched cup of espresso. Ever since Marcus Moreau, Clara's father, walked in with a calm gravity that commanded the room, Arthur knew his career had reached a turning point. The Aventador Clara had asked about was now officially sold. Marcus had bought it with one very specific clause in the contract. Handled only by personnel selected through a non-discriminatory review process. Not vengeance, but a prompt for the entire Cavallero system to reassess itself. Arthur had already suspended 2 sales staff, Lucien and Clairette, the ones who'd condescended to Clara. This afternoon, Arthur had asked Clara to return. Not to deliver a performative apology, but to listen. Clara stepped through the doors in a light gray coat, face unreadable. She didn't glance at the Lamborghini. She didn't need to. She looked straight at Arthur. "You asked for me?" Arthur stood. "Mademoiselle Moreau, I owe you a serious conversation." Clara said nothing. Arthur gestured to a chair and sat down. "We handled that day wrong. Not just by protocol but ethically. As people. I won't make excuses." Clara gave a slight nod. She waited. Arthur continued, dropping the corporate language for the first time. "I used to think this showroom existed for a certain class. People who looked the part. But that day you walked in and I didn't see the real person behind the white sneakers." Silence. Clara finally looked up, her tone even. "You don't need to flatter me." "I'm not flattering you," Arthur said firmly. "I'm admitting something." Just then, a young woman entered the room. Crisp blazer, bright eyes, slightly nervous smile. "This is Sophie Delorme," Arthur said. "The first new hire since we changed our recruitment policy. Based on skill, not surname." Clara turned to her. The young woman had warm brown skin and a quiet glow in her expression. "I know you," Sophie said. "You're the reason I applied here. And the reason I believed I had a chance." Arthur slid a folder across the table. "We're launching a program called Respect Forward, a new service training initiative across all Cavallero showrooms in Europe. We'd be honored if you'd open the first session." Clara looked down at the proposal, then back at Arthur. "I'm not a professional speaker." "We're not looking for professional," Arthur said with a quiet smile. "We're looking for real. And for truth." When Clara stepped out of the showroom, the rain had stopped. The Parisian afternoon remained damp and subdued. But inside her, the sky had cleared. At the bus stop, Sophie jogged up behind her, calling out, "Clara, can I say something?" Clara turned, one eyebrow raised. "Thank you for not letting it slide. You might not know it, but your silence that day, it spoke louder than any shout." Clara smiled, not the smile of a victor, but the kind of smile that knew. Sometimes the smallest act, when done at the right moment, can open a door wide enough for real change to walk through. Paris, 3 weeks later. At the Grand Palais Éphémère, the lights glowed in elegant gold. The Commerce and Conscience 2025 Forum brought together leading names from Europe's retail, fashion, automotive, and finance sectors. This year's theme: customers are not images, they are people. Clara Moreau wasn't among the keynote guests. She didn't represent a major brand. She wasn't a corporate executive. But after her training session at Cavallero Automobili, and the now viral LinkedIn video that followed, something unexpected happened. The forum's organizers officially invited Clara to deliver the opening address on day 2. First, she declined. But Sophie, the young new hire at Cavallero, sent her a single message that made Clara pause. "You're not speaking for yourself. You're speaking for those who've never been given a voice." Clara said yes. 9 a.m. Grand Palais. In the main hall, over 600 delegates sat in neat rows, most dressed in expensive business attire, industry badges pinned to tailored lapels. At center stage, a simple wooden podium, a single microphone. Clara Moreau appeared on the screen. Some curious glances. A few frowns. "Who is she?" Clara stepped out. Her hair tied low, a plain white shirt, a gray blazer with no label. Her expression: calm. No notes. No slides. No assistants. She began. 3 weeks ago, I was denied service at a luxury car showroom. Because I dressed simply. Because my skin isn't white. Because I didn't look like a customer with money. A ripple of silence spread through the room. She paused for a breath, then continued. I didn't get angry. I didn't film a video. I didn't shout. I just stood there and let them speak. Then I walked out and made sure they had no choice but to listen next time. She told the story briefly of Marcus Moreau, the Lamborghini, Arthur Leclerc, and the Cavallero showroom. Then she looked up. I don't need your pity. I need you to ask the simplest question. Who are we really serving? And how? Then came the turning point. Clara raised her hand. From the front row, Sophie stepped forward and handed her a small board. On it were two statistics. 75% of customers who experience discrimination in retail never report it. 92% of managers don't know it happened. Clara pointed to the first. Because they stay silent. Like I used to. But today, I'm not silent anymore. A scattering of applause. Then more. Then the room. She ended quietly. I'm not a polished speaker, but I'm real. And if a small showroom in Paris can change its mindset just by listening once, then you, with all your power and budgets, can surely do much more. She bowed, stepped off the podium. The room stood unprompted. In the crowd, some cleaned their glasses. Others lowered their heads, reflective. Some pulled out their phones, searching Clara Moreau. That afternoon, organizers announced a new pilot project led by Clara. True Feel. Real names, real experiences. Partnering with major brands to build bias-free retail training through Real, named Mystery Shoppers. And for the first time in the forum's history, someone outside the industry became its symbol of inspiration. Paris, 2 months after Clara Moreau's speech. The Cavallero Automobili showroom on Avenue George V no longer looked different on the outside. The luxury Italian supercars remained. Lamborghinis, Ferraris, Aston Martins gleamed under soft golden lighting, resting atop immaculate marble floors beneath towering glass ceilings. But the atmosphere had changed. A new sign hung at the entrance. We don't sell cars to social classes. We sell cars to people. Monday morning, Arthur Leclerc, the showroom's executive director, stood before his sales team. More than 20 employees dressed in sleek black uniforms stood in disciplined rows. Beside Arthur stood Clara Moreau, no longer the girl they underestimated, but now the industry's first human rights and service integrity advisor in luxury automotive retail. Arthur spoke plainly. We once believed great products and flawless service were enough to attract clients. But we forgot one thing. No one wants to walk into a place where they feel judged before they even speak. Clara continued, calm and clear. We don't need to apologize for the past, but we must take responsibility for the future. That morning, Cavallero launched a new internal campaign called Fresh Eyes Every Day. It involved role rotation. Managers would pose as modest walk-in customers. Receptionists would be randomly mystery audited for implicit bias. No exceptions. Not even Arthur. A digital board was installed by the front desk. Did you feel respected? If not, tell us. We promise to respond within 24 hours. The results were unexpected. Within 4 weeks, return visits rose by 23%. Sales didn't spike dramatically, but time spent inside the showroom doubled. Social media feedback shifted from intimidating, expensive, to warm, surprising, approachable. One German customer left a review. I walked in wearing jeans, expecting to be treated like an alien, but the attendant called me, sir, like I just stepped out of a Bentley. Clara Moreau was later invited to join Cavallero's Global Advisory Council. Some rival dealerships scoffed at first.